He kept saying, "Next week, Mama." And I kept believing there would always be another next week. I never realized how heavy hope can feel until I began carrying it alone. Every time Daniel said those words, I could almost hear the wheels of a plane touching down, the sound of the front door opening, the smell of his cologne rushing into the hallway. I'd close my eyes and see it all. His shoes by the mat, his laughter bouncing off these tired walls. And then, just like that, the picture would fade. And I'd be standing in the same quiet kitchen, holding on to the same sentence that always ends with soon. The clock above the stove clicks too loudly these days. Every second feels like a reminder that something is supposed to happen. I sit at the table, staring at the little pharmacy calendar pinned beside the refrigerator. The months have faces, landscapes, waterfalls, mountains. And sometimes I think the people who print them must believe the world is full of places worth going. Mine is smaller than that. My world begins at the front gate and ends at the post office on the corner. But on that wall, I let myself dream further. January, a frozen lake. February, a valley of flowers. March, a jet slicing through clouds. And underneath it, in my neat handwriting, Daniel's flight, April 12th. I used red ink because red means certain. The week before April 12th, I became a younger woman again. I moved like purpose had returned. I scrubbed the porch steps until the wood showed its old color. I aired out his room, folded the blanket he likes, the one with tiny blue squares, and placed his childhood photo on the nightstand. I even dusted the family albums, the ones he never asks about anymore but that I can't seem to close. Neighbors waved from the street, expecting company. One asked. I smiled. My son's coming home. The words felt like sunshine leaving my mouth. I said them again just to hear how beautiful they sounded. I made his favorite bread, the one with honey and sesame that makes the kitchen smell like a memory. I boiled cinnamon sticks for tea, because that's what I used to give him when he was sick as a boy. While I worked, I talked to him out loud, though he wasn't here. I told him how the neighbor's cat had kittens, how the lilac bush was blooming early this year, how the roof still leaks near the window he once broke with a baseball. I told him everything, because silence is a cruel conversation partner. The phone rang the night before the flight. My heart lifted like it used to when he came home from school. That pure reflex of joy before reason catches up. Mama! Just hearing his voice made me forget how lonely the day had been. I hate to say this, but something came up at work. Something important. I asked, already knowing the answer. A big client. They need me next week. I'll rebook, I promise. He sounded so tired. I could hear the city behind him. Cars, voices, life moving faster than love could keep up. It's all right, my boy, I said, keeping my tone light. Woke first. Home second. You're the best, Mama. I'll make it up to you. I laughed softly. You always do. But when the line went quiet, the kitchen filled with a silence so thick it felt physical, like humidity before a storm. Next morning, I took my red pen and crossed out April 12th. The ink bled through the paper. It looked angry, like a wound. But I told myself, it's fine. Just 7 days. I circled April 19th and drew a little airplane beside it, a child's doodle for a mother's hope. I whispered to the calendar, you can wait 1 more week, can't you? The calendar didn't answer. It never does. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a message. A short voice note. Love you, Mama. Can't wait to see you. His voice had that cheerful hurry that successful people use when they are guilty. I pressed play 3 times, then saved it to a folder called Daniel, Home. Every time I listen, I catch something new, a sigh he tried to hide, the hum of traffic, the sound of a stranger's city swallowing my son whole. I cooked anyway that night. Old habits don't cancel with phone calls. I set 2 plates, even poured a glass of water for him, out of superstition more than sense. Dinner for one tastes better when you pretend it isn't. As I ate, the wind rattled the window pane. The chair across from me stayed perfectly still. And for the first time, I realized loneliness doesn't creak or moan. It just sits quietly and waits to be noticed. Daniel sends postcards sometimes. Corporate ones, glossy photos of cities, printed signatures. I keep them on the fridge with magnets shaped like fruits. They've faded in the light. Every time I reach for milk, I see his handwriting slowly disappearing. I run my fingers over it to remind myself it was once fresh. I whisper his name like a password that still unlocks something in me. When he was 8, I used to wait for him at the bus stop after school. He'd jump off the steps, backpack bouncing, and shout, "I'm here, Mama." Once, he made me late for work, and I scolded him. He looked up and said, "Don't worry, I'll always come back." Children say things like that so easily, and mothers believe them forever. Now, I wait at the window instead of the bus stop, and I whisper, "You promised," not out of anger, but because repetition is the only way to keep a promise alive. This morning, Mrs. Alvarez knocked on my door with a pie. She said, "Still waiting on your boy?" I smiled. "Next week." She nodded, the way people do when they understand but can't help. When she left, I realized something. No one ever asks if I'm lonely. They ask who I'm waiting for, as if loneliness is just someone else's lateness. Before bed, I walk through the house turning off lights, but I leave the porch one on, a beacon for planes that never land. The bed feels too large now. I lie on the left side, the right kept smooth and empty, his side. Sometimes I dream that I hear a taxi outside, doors shutting, footsteps running up the path. I wake up smiling, then listen hard for the sound to repeat. It never does. The calendar pages flutter in the breeze from the open window, each one like a wing trying to take off. I watch them and think. Time doesn't move forward. It circles, like a plane waiting for permission to land. I'm still waiting for clearance to. Still waiting for next week. Still believing in arrivals. It's strange, isn't it? How life gives us so many ways to connect. Phones, screens, flights, schedules. And yet the only thing we really run out of is presence. We think we're saving time. But time isn't money, it's company. When Daniel says, "Next week, Mama," I hear love trying its best to survive reality. And when I answer, "I'll be here," I mean it, not because I have patience, but because waiting is all mothers ever learned to do perfectly. I look at that red circled date one more time. April 19th. It glows faintly under the lamp, a little dot of faith on cheap paper. And I whisper again, "Next week, Mama." It almost sounds believable. Almost. They say a week isn't long. But when you're waiting for someone you love, a week becomes a country you must walk across barefoot. Each morning felt heavier than the one before. The days didn't pass. They hovered, like clouds that promised rain but never delivered. I crossed off the first 2 days on the calendar quickly. By the third, I stopped using ink. It felt wrong to erase time that hadn't given me what it promised. I found myself rehearsing the moment he'd arrive. It became my favorite play, and I knew every line. The knock on the door, the small gasp when I opened it, my hands cupping his face, saying, "You've lost weight again. You don't eat right." He'd laugh and roll his eyes. "I eat fine, Mama." "Then you need my cooking." I could see it so clearly that sometimes I had to touch the doorknob just to remind myself the scene hadn't started yet. I still went shopping that week. Old habits move the body even when the mind resists. I walked through aisles with a basket full of things only he liked. Honey, sesame seeds, brown sugar, the coffee brand he always brings back from the city. At the counter, the cashier smiled. Big family dinner coming up. Just one guest, I said. Someone special. Yes, I whispered. Very. Her smile lingered. She didn't know that sometimes a single arrival can feel like redemption. On Thursday, my phone rang again. Daniel's name glowed bright across the screen. Hi, Mama. You sound tired, my boy. Long week. You holding up okay? Always. I just washed your sheets. He laughed. That same bright laugh I used to hear through playground fences. You didn't have to do that. Of course, I did. You're still coming, aren't you? There was a pause, short but sharp. Yeah, but maybe not Friday night. I might have to move it to Sunday. Sunday. That's only 2 days more, I told myself. But I could hear the lie in my own breathing. I told him it was fine. That I understood. That I wasn't disappointed. He said, "You're the best, Mama." And I said, "I know." But after the call ended, I sat in the same spot for an hour, staring at the phone like it had betrayed me. Understanding is a strange thing. We give it freely, and it breaks us quietly. That Friday night, I cooked anyway. It's hard to stop old rituals. They're the bones of habit. The soup simmered softly. The bread rose slow, and the kitchen filled with the kind of warmth that feels like company. Until it doesn't. I poured 2 bowls. One stayed untouched. At midnight, I put his bowl in the fridge, covered it gently, as if keeping food warm could keep love alive. Through my kitchen window, I could see the neighbor's house across the street, lights flickering as their family ate dinner, laughter spilling through thin walls. I imagined Daniel sitting at their table instead, laughing, telling stories, eating food that wasn't mine. The thought stung more than I expected, not because it was true, but because it almost could be. Loneliness is never loud. It's the echo of laughter that doesn't belong to you. His room looked untouched, a museum of paused memories. The blanket folded perfectly, the pillow still indented from last summer. His old baseball glove sat on the shelf beside a picture of us at the lake. In the photo, we're smiling. But I remember that day. It was the first time he called me Mom instead of Mama. It felt grown up, and for some reason, it hurt a little even then. That weekend, I went to my doctor, just a checkup. He asked how I was feeling. I said, lonely, but otherwise fine. He laughed softly, as if loneliness was something measurable, like blood pressure or sugar levels. He told me to stay active, to eat well, to rest. And I thought, rest from what? Rest from waiting? Rest from remembering. Some things the body can't heal from. They need presence, not pills. That Sunday evening, I got a text. Woke emergency again. Mama, I'll call tomorrow. Love you. I stayed at it for a long time, my thumb hovering over reply. I typed, "That's okay. Take care." Then deleted it. Typed again. "I understand. I always do." Deleted that too. Finally, I sent, "Love you too." Because sometimes love is just 3 words sent to prove we're still reachable. Later, I stepped outside. The night smelled like wet grass and faint regret. Somewhere far above, a plane passed, its lights blinking like distant promises. I closed my eyes and imagined him on one of them, asleep, dreaming of home. The sound faded. The sky went back to being just sky. People think heartbreak happens suddenly, but in truth, it happens quietly, in the spaces between canceled plans and polite words. This was just the first delay. There would be others, and each one would take a small piece of waiting with it. Still, I told myself he'd come, because that's what mothers do. We believe arrivals are just postponed, never canceled. I walked back inside, turned off the porch light, and whispered to the empty hall, "Next week, Mama." It still sounded almost believable. The house sounds different when nobody is coming. You notice little things. The faucet drip, the hum of the fridge, the way your own footsteps seem too confident for a place so still. It's been 3 weeks since Daniel last called. Not long, if you count in calendars. A lifetime, if you count in expectations. I stopped crossing off days. Now they blur together, like wet ink that refuses to dry. On my phone there's a small folder labeled Daniel. Inside it live 13 voicemails, each one a different season of his voice. Spring laughter, summer hurry, autumn apologies, winter promises. Sometimes I play them in order, like chapters in a story I already know the ending of. The first one is my favorite. Hey mama, flight's booked. Can't wait to see you. I still remember how my heart jumped when that message was new. Now it plays like a song that belongs to another lifetime. Every evening, after I water the plants, I sit by the window, headphones in, and let his words fill the room. Each message begins with, "Hey mama," 2 words that still straighten my spine. They sound young, confident, rushed. He always says he'll call again soon. He never mentions when. I whisper back to the recordings, answering as if he could hear me. "Yes, sweetheart, I made your soup." "No, I didn't forget your birthday." "Yes, I'm still waiting." Loneliness feels lighter when it's disguised as conversation. The other day I almost called him by accident. Pressed play instead of dial. When I realized what I'd done, I laughed out loud, but the sound felt unfamiliar. That's when I knew laughter fades, too, if you don't share it often enough. I wrote him a letter last night, on paper, with ink that smudges easily. "My dear Daniel, I know work keeps you busy. I know life has deadlines I never had. But remember, my love, there's a kind of success only silence can measure. It's called peace. I hope you still look for it." I folded it neatly, sealed it, but couldn't bring myself to post it. Instead, I tucked it behind his photo on the mantel. Maybe some letters are meant only for air to read. He promised to visit by the end of the month. I promised not to lose patience. Both of us are keeping half our vows. Promises, I've learned, don't always need to break loudly. Sometimes they dissolve quietly, like sugar in tea. Sweet at first, then gone. When he was small, he used to record silly little tapes for me on an old cassette player. He'd say things like, "Mama, don't forget my lunch. Mama, I love you more than Dad," and laugh into the microphone until I'd join in. Last week, while cleaning the attic, I found one of those tapes. The ribbon was brittle, but the sound was still there. The moment I heard his 5-year-old voice, I cried, not from sadness, but from the shock of hearing a time when I was still needed daily. Mrs. Alvarez stopped by again. She said, "You should visit him, Day. Don't just wait." I smiled politely. She doesn't understand. A mother's visit feels like interference. A son's visit feels like love. So I stay, because staying is what mothers do best. Every night I charge my phone beside the bed, screen turned upward like a small lighthouse. Even when I sleep, I feel it glowing. A silent companion, a maybe tomorrow waiting to happen. Sometimes the battery dies. I panic as if I've lost him entirely. I keep it plugged in now, not for the phone's sake, but for my heart's. Yesterday morning, a new voicemail appeared. His voice softer, slower. "Hey mama, I'm sorry. Things have been crazy. I'll book the ticket tonight. I promise. I miss you." That last sentence, I played it 3 times. The first time, I smiled. The second, I cried. The third, I whispered back, "I miss you more." Then I saved it, named it the one that still believes. Voicemails are strange things. They let us talk to ghosts that aren't gone yet. They keep people alive inside devices that never age. But even as I press play again and again, I know something time is whispering behind the sound. A voice isn't presence. A promise isn't a rival. Still, I keep listening. Because love, once recorded, is love that refuses to fade completely. Maybe next week he'll call. Maybe next week he'll come. Until then, I'll keep his voice close enough to feel real. It arrived on a Wednesday morning, while I was folding laundry. A small sound, a soft ding, that familiar vibration of hope. For a moment I thought it was him calling. I wiped my hands, hurried to the phone, only to find an email. Subject line, change of travel plans. Just 6 words in the body. Sorry, Mama, have to push to next month. We'll call tonight. Love you. I stared at the words until they blurred. There was no anger, just an ache that felt tired of introducing itself. The table was already set. His favorite plates, the yellow ones with chipped edges that I could never throw away. I had spent the night before cutting flowers from the garden, arranging them in the glass vase he bought me for my birthday 5 years ago. When I read that email, the flowers looked suddenly too bright, as if they didn't understand the mood had changed. I touched one petal and whispered, "You'll have to wait, too." He said he'd call that night. He didn't. I stayed near the phone, pretending to read a book I couldn't see the words of. The clock moved, the kettle whistled, and outside, the wind pressed against the windows like someone asking to be let in. When the phone finally buzzed, it was a promotional message about a sale at the grocery store. I laughed, a dry, startled laugh that sounded too much like crying. That weekend I cooked the same soup again, tomato and lentil, the kind that smells like homecoming. Halfway through, I realized I didn't know why I was making it. Cooking had become a form of prayer. Each stir of the spoon a whispered plea. Let him come this time. I ladled a bowl anyway, set it by the window, watched it cool. By the time the stars appeared, the soup was cold, and the hope with it. The sound of my neighbors' laughter floated through the evening. They were hosting guests. I could hear chairs scraping, music playing softly. It made me think of Daniel's last visit. 2 summers ago, he'd sat right here, barefoot, telling me stories about the city, eating half the bread before dinner even started. When he left that day, he kissed my forehead and said, "Next time, I'll stay longer." Promises age too, just like people. They wrinkle under the weight of time. On Sunday, it finally rang. His name lit up the screen like a second sunrise. "Mama, I'm sorry, it's been chaos here." "You're busy. I understand. I hate that I keep doing this to you." "Doing what? You're just living your life." He sighed. That sound, half guilt, half fatigue, broke me more than words ever could. "I'll book the ticket again." "Promise." "Then I'll start the bread again." We both laughed, the kind of laughter that tries to patch over cracks too deep to fix. The next morning, I went online and printed the new ticket confirmation he sent. It felt almost sacred, like holding proof that he still intended to return. I pinned it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a heart. The flight date was May 20th, a whole month away. I whispered to the paper, "Please stay real." Later that week, I went to the clinic again, just a follow-up. The doctor said my blood pressure was low, that I should rest more. Rest. The word sounded foreign. When you're waiting, rest feels like surrender. He asked if someone was coming to visit soon. I smiled and said, "My son. He's flying in next month." He smiled back, the way people do when they hope you're right. That night, a storm rolled through, rain against the roof, lightning that made the curtains flash like cameras. Every thunderclap reminded me of airports, of planes cutting through clouds to find their way home. I imagined Daniel on one of them, head resting against the window, coming back to me. I fell asleep in that thought, the storm still whispering. When I woke, the power was out, and the house smelled of rain and distance. In the morning, I found the dough I'd prepared the night before, still sitting on the counter, overrisen and collapsed. It looked tired, like it had been waiting too long for something that wouldn't come. I threw it away and whispered, "Next time." Even my food had started believing in reschedules. On Wednesday, he sent a short video. His office behind him, papers stacked high, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, Mama, just checking in. I'm okay. Promise I'll make it this time." I replayed it 3 times, paused at the part where his face softens. That's where the truth lives, in the moment between duty and love. That night I wrote something in my notebook. When love is postponed often enough, it begins to resemble absence. But I will keep the porch light on anyway, because love, if it ever returns, should be able to recognize its way home. The next morning, I realized something strange. May 20th wasn't just his flight date. It was also my birthday. He hadn't noticed, and I didn't tell him. I wanted to see if fate would be kind enough to let one gift arrive on time. Reschedules don't sound tragic. They sound ordinary, harmless, but they build like dust, layer upon layer, until the heart becomes unrecognizable under all that waiting. Every delay leaves a mark you can't see, a small, invisible scar made of silence. Still, I keep planning meals. I keep washing the sheets. I keep whispering to the calendar, "This one will be different." Because even after 1,000 postponed goodbyes, a mother's faith doesn't cancel. It simply rebooks itself. May 20th. I whisper, "It's just another date, but maybe this time it'll mean something." The call came on a Monday when the house smelled like lemon cleaner and reheated soup. Not morning, not evening, one of those hours that never decides what it wants to be. My phone flashed his name. A small shock through the chest, an old bell rung by muscle memory. "Mama!" Just one wide and the whole room stood up. "I'm here, my boy." His breath on the line was heavier than usual. "Citier," a sprint between meetings. "I booked it," he said quickly. "I finally booked it." I closed my eyes and saw the red circle on the calendar. May 20th. My birthday wearing wings. "Then I'll warm the house," I whispered. "It's been practicing." He laughed, but it sounded like somebody else's smile. "Listen, I can't stay long, Mama. They are calling me in to a review. I wanted you to know I did it. Non-refundable. No backing out. Non-refundable. Love, at last, had penalties." "Good," I said. "Then there's a seat on a plane that knows your name." He exhaled like a man setting down a suitcase he'd been carrying inside his ribs. "I'll call tonight. We'll plan. I want your bread. The honey one. I've already bought the sesame." "Of course you did," he said softly. A voice in the background called Daniel, the way strangers call your child when you're too far away to correct their tone. "I have to run," he said. "Tonight, okay." "Tonight," I said. The line clicked. The fan kept turning, and all the words we didn't say kept breathing in the quiet. I took out the flour, the honey, the warm water that feels like forgiveness under your fingers. Kneading used to be work. Now it's prayer you can touch. As I pressed the dough, I felt a flutter at the edge of breath. Not pain, just a reminder that the stairs have grown steeper since last summer. I paused, leaned on the counter, and smiled at the bowl like a conspirator. "We have an appointment," I told the yeast. "Don't be late." I covered the dough and set it near the window where afternoon gathers like a cat. Outside, the street dried into a mirror for the small sun that always returns. While the dough rose, I opened my notebook and found the page I'd been rewriting for weeks. The speech I will not make when he arrives. I added 2 new lines. "We'll eat in the kitchen, not the dining room. The kitchen forgives better." We won't talk about time lost. Time hates being corrected. I underlined forgives twice, then closed the book before my courage could read it back to me. Mrs. Alvarez knocked, clutching a bundle of rosemary from her garden. "For your bread," she said. "I heard your window singing again." We stood in the doorway like old actresses sharing a scene we'd rehearsed for months. "He booked it," I whispered. Her face softened the way curtains do at sunrise. "Then I'll light a candle," she said, pressing the rosemary into my hand. "For planes and promises." I breathed the green sharpness in and thought how strange it is that hope has a smell. Evening arrived with its pockets full of blue. I set the phone on the table and watched the fan trace circles in the air. 7 o'clock. 8. 9. I told myself not to look at the clock. I looked at the clock. 10. No call. I texted "Sleep well, my boy," then deleted it. Typed "Proud of you," deleted that too. Finally, I sent a single heart. It glowed in the chat like a porch light that refuses to scold. It came near midnight, a stuttering ring that sounded apologetic. "Mama, I'm sorry. Air moves slowly at night," I said. "Words too." He laughed, exhausted. "I'm at the office." Still, I didn't want to miss today without hearing you. The room softened. Sometimes love is not an action, it's an intention you can hear. "Tell me something ordinary," I said. "Make it small. Small things arrive on time." He described a crooked stapler, a co-worker's purple socks, the way the vending machine kept the last tea hostage. He spoke like a boy again, offering pebbles from his pocket. "And you?" he asked. "Tell me something not worth telling." "Your bread rose faster than pride," I said. "And the plant you gave me leaned toward the window like it knows when you book flights." We both fell quiet, smiling into the same corner of air. "How are you feeling, Mama?" The question came soft, like someone knocking on a door they built too late. "Older," I said, because the truth deserved at least half the room. "But not old enough to miss your visit." "Good," he said, "because I'm really coming." He meant it. I could hear it in the way his voice sat down. "I know." I didn't tell him about the small dizziness, the afternoon nap that became 2 hours, the pill box with more evening than morning. I would give him that mercy. I would keep the house warm. We planned badly, which is to say beautifully. "Walk to the bakery," he said. "If your city legs remember how," I teased. "Drive to the lake." "Only if we promise to sit more than we remember." "Dinner at the old place." "It's closed," I said. "But the recipe isn't." His laugh landed in the room like a bird that trusts the sill. "I'll bring that coffee you like." "Bring yourself. Coffee can be made. Mothers can't." Silence again, the good kind. In it, I could hear the dough rise a little more, as if listening to. When he finally said good night, the phone cooled under my palm. I walked the house as if it were a train I was riding for the first time, touching chair backs, smoothing the arm of the sofa, straightening a painting that never stays straight. In his room, the blue square blanket looked too neat, so I mussed it slightly. Arrivals prefer honesty. On his nightstand, I placed the rosemary and a small bar of soap wrapped in paper. The paper said lavender, but the scent said stay. Back in the kitchen, the dough had peaked, then sunk slightly in the middle. A small sigh of bread. I felt it mirrored in my chest. I sat today, counted heartbeats. The fan made a slow halo of breeze. I thought of calling the nurse. I didn't. I've learned to listen. A body tells you what it can still lift. Tonight, it could lift hope. That would be enough. At the fridge, the magnet heart held the itinerary. Arrive May 20 to 9:25 a.m. I traced the letters the way you trace a prayer you've said too often. I added a note in pencil, blue shirt. Airport sign, welcome home. I smiled at myself, then left the sign making for morning. Let surprises keep some sparkle. In bed, the ceiling made its usual map of hairline cracks. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't bargain. I just pictured him stepping through the door and the air learning his weight again. Sometimes that's the whole prayer. See it and leave space for it to happen. Sun across the tablecloth like spilled milk. The bread baked into the house, turning the walls kind. I made a list with the slow joy of a woman packing a picnic. Fresh coffee beans, grind coarse. Jar of honey. 2 apples, the good ones. Cloth napkins he never uses. Stories we will tell without fixing them. I felt strong. I felt tired. I felt like the door had already opened, and I was nowhere near it yet. At 10:12 a.m., a text. Review moved again. Barely slept. I'll nap then call. Love you, Mama. I stood with the phone in my hand and let the 2 words love you be louder than nap or again. It's a choice. It's always a choice. I placed the phone face up by the window so sunlight could keep it company. All afternoon I replayed last night in my head, not the sentences, but the way his voice sat down. When a child's voice sits down, a mother's heart finally stands. I realized something simple. We had planned so much nothing. Walks, coffee, bread, time, thick and warm as soup. That's the life I wanted for him here. Boredom with me in it. There is a confession I keep almost making. I'm more tired now, my boy. The stairs complain about me. The mirror writes truth I can't edit. But I always pick a smaller truth instead. The plant is leaning toward the window. The bread rose like a show-off. Small truths arrive safely. Big truths miss flights. I used to vow, he will come. Now I vow, I will be soft when he does, even if he is late. We are all late for something. Childhood, apologies, goodbyes. I will not let lateness be the loudest sound. Do you know the weight of a 3rd call? It's not louder than the first or the second. It's quieter, because by then, love has learned to whisper in case hope startles easily. If you're listening to me now, ask yourself, who is waiting for your voice to sit down? What small truth could you say today that would arrive on time? Which promise needs a ticket you cannot refund? Call them. Book it. Let boredom be the plan. Make bread that rises just to prove you still can. It's been 12 days since the last call. Not that I'm counting, but I know it's 12. 12 dinners. 12 mornings. 12 moments when the house didn't echo his voice back to me. The phone sits on the table beside my chair. Charged. Bright. Faithful. Sometimes it lights up on its own. A delivery message, a spam offer, a wrong number, and for one brief, cruel second, my heart forgets how old it is. The doctor says I need to rest more. He doesn't understand that rest is heavier than work. When your days are small and silent, rest feels like disappearing a little faster. I get dizzy sometimes when I stand too quickly. So I've started sitting slower, taking my time to do everything, not out of grace, but because slowness is the only rhythm my body and my life still agree on. Sometimes I catch myself holding the wall for balance, pretending I just needed to reach a picture frame. The plant Daniel gave me leans harder toward the sunlight now. It's grown tall, thin, too much reaching, not enough grounding. I understand that kind of growth. I turn it gently each morning, so it learns balance again. A mother's instinct, even for a plant. There's an empty chair across from me that started to speak, not in words, but in the way it creaks when I sit down, as if asking, still waiting. I always answer softly, yes, but not impatiently. Patience has turned from a virtue into a lifestyle. I wear it like an old cardigan, comfortable, necessary, and impossible to take off. I found the old ticket confirmation he sent, printed, folded neatly, tucked between the pages of my Bible. Psalm 27. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. It felt fitting. I've been waiting all my life. For love, for forgiveness, for his footsteps on this porch again. I smoothed the page, kissed the paper like it could carry the message to heaven and back. If prayers had wings, mine would wear his name on their feathers. Yesterday, the phone showed a missed call at 3:41 p.m. My heart jumped, but when I checked, it was the pharmacy, reminding me my prescription was ready. I stayed at the number anyway, just to feel the shape of hope one more time. Evenings here are filled with other people's lives. The couple next door arguing about groceries. Children riding bikes too fast down the wet road. A dog barking for no reason except to prove it's alive. And me, the quiet witness. The chapter that doesn't get read aloud anymore. I sometimes hum to the rhythm of their noise, to remind myself I still make sound. Last night I made spaghetti. I sat at the table, twirled the fork, took a bite, and whispered, "You'd complain there's not enough salt." Then I smiled, because I could almost hear him say it. Memory can be such a kind liar sometimes. This morning, while cleaning the drawer near the phone, I found an envelope addressed in Daniel's handwriting, postmarked 3 years ago. Inside was a birthday card. The front said, "To the best mom in the world." Inside, one line, "I'll see you soon, promise." I ran my fingers over the ink until it faded just a little, as if love itself were trying to turn invisible. I caught my reflection today, unexpectedly. My hair has turned almost silver, but my smile still looks 20. That's the thing about waiting. It preserves you in certain places. The body may age, but hope stays young and foolish. At 9:37 tonight, the phone finally lit up. A text. "Sorry, Mama. Long week. I'll call soon. Love you." Just that. No apology could fit the gap between words and time. Still, I smiled, because even silence, when broken, sounds like forgiveness. It's funny how the world keeps assuming I'm okay. The cashier at the store, the doctor, even my own voice on the phone when I leave messages for Daniel. "I'm fine," I say. "Everything's good here." But truth wears quiet shoes. It stands behind you until you're too tired to turn around. The truth is, I'm lonely, and I've started talking to the furniture again. But I do it politely. I still have manners. 2 nights ago, I fainted for a moment. Just a moment. The world tilted. The room spun. And I found myself on the floor beside the chair. When I opened my eyes, the calendar stared back at me from across the room. May 17th. 3 days until the flight. I laughed. Imagine falling right before arriving. How impolite. I feel it sometimes. Like something inside me is packing, folding memories, closing drawers. Not death, just readiness. The kind of peace that stops asking questions. I look at the Bible on the table, the ticket still tucked inside, and I think, maybe he'll come home and find it there. Maybe he'll read the verse. Maybe he'll understand waiting isn't a waste. It's just love's longest breath. You know what silence really is. It's not the absence of sound. It's the space where you start hearing your own heart again. Mine sounds slower these days. Not weak, just quieter, like it's trying to make room for something else. Maybe faith, maybe surrender, maybe both. I used to think love was about showing up. Now I know. It's also about waiting gracefully when someone can't. 3 days, I whisper to the empty house. Just 3 more days. And somewhere between the tick of the clock and the soft hum of the fridge, I imagine his voice answering, "Soon, Mama, I'm coming soon." The morning came earlier than I expected. Gray, gentle, hesitant, as if even the sun was tiptoeing. May 20th, my birthday, and his arrival day. I woke before the alarm, before the birds, before reason. For the first time in years, the air in the house felt new, lighter, almost curious. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded, not praying, just steadying. "He's on his way," I whispered. "He's finally on his way." Old habits first. Bread ready on the counter, coffee beans ground, table set for two, the porch light still burning from last night. I opened the window. The lilac bush had bloomed overnight, its scent drifting in like an early apology from heaven. For once, even silence felt friendly. While I tied my hair, the radio in the kitchen hummed the morning news. I never really listen. Too many voices, too many tragedies that don't belong to me. But one sentence caught and stayed. "A minor medical emergency at the regional airport delayed arrivals this morning." I smiled. How ordinary. A delay on a day like this almost felt expected. Maybe God was just making sure I had time to warm the bread. Around 9 a.m., I felt it, a strange flutter in my chest, like the body reminding the heart that it's mortal. I sat down on the sofa, held the edge of my shawl, and breathed slowly. Just a moment of lightheadedness, I told myself. The clock tick-tocked, each sound a footstep walking me somewhere I couldn't see. The phone rang. I smiled instantly, already hearing his voice in my head. But it wasn't Daniel. It was Mrs. Alvarez. "I baked you a cake. Dear birthday girl. I'll bring it over later." I thanked her, heart racing as if love and fear had met for coffee. "He's coming today," I told her. "Then it'll be the best birthday ever," she said. I didn't notice the way my breathing had changed, shallow and slow, like a wave retreating too far from shore. I set the fresh loaf on the table beside my Bible, the ticket still tucked between Psalm 27's pages. I smoothed the paper one last time. "Wait for the Lord. Be strong, and let your heart take courage." I read it aloud, not as scripture, but as permission. I leaned back in the chair, closed my eyes for just a minute. Miles away, Daniel was on the plane. He looked out the window, finally free of meetings, finally heading home. He texted, in the air, "Mama, see you soon. Don't cry." He laughed to himself and closed his eyes. For once, he slept peacefully. Back home, the clock struck 9:30, then 10, then 10:05. The tea on the stove whistled faintly, then quieted. Outside, the wind blew through the gate, carrying the scent of lilac and baked bread. I was still in my chair, head tilted slightly toward the door, listening. The Bible lay open, the ticket half slipping out, as if ready to fly on its own. The plane touched down smoothly. Daniel smiled at the applause of strangers. He texted again. "Landed. Heading your way now." Then turned his phone to silent as he stepped into the crowd. By the time he reached the street and saw the porch light glowing, he was already rehearsing his apology. He knocked once, twice, then called, "Mama." No answer. He found the door unlocked. The smell of warm bread filled the air, the Bible on the table, the ticket still inside, and his mother, still in her chair, peaceful, eyes closed, as if listening for the sound of his arrival one last time. On the counter was a small envelope, his name on it in her handwriting. Inside, a photo of him at age 10, and a note that read, "For the day you finally come home, don't be sorry for being late. I waited for the Lord too." He pressed the note to his forehead and sat in the chair beside her, the one that had been waiting its whole life for this moment. If I could speak now, I'd tell him this. "You did come home, my boy. Not too late for love, only too late for time. But don't carry regret. It's a suitcase that never unpacks." I'd say, "Light the porch again when you miss me. I'll find my way by it." Love doesn't end with distance. It waits in kitchens and calendars and printed tickets tucked between pages. It lives in the smell of bread, in the quiet of chairs that still face the door. If you're listening to me now, call home. Visit. Don't let your plane be the one that arrives after goodbye. Daniel drove the long road back from the airport in silence. The sky was gray, flat, endless, a mirror for his thoughts. The ticket still sat on the passenger seat beside him, creased where her fingers had folded it. He couldn't bring himself to throw it away. It felt alive somehow, as if it still carried the warmth of her waiting. He passed the grocery store where she used to shop, the little bakery with the blue sign, and finally, the house with the white fence and the lilac bush. The porch light was still on, though there was no reason for it to be. Inside, nothing had moved. Her shoes still by the door, her shawl still draped neatly on the arm of the couch. The chair where she sat was facing the window, toward the gate, toward where he should have been sooner. He reached for her hand. It was cool, but soft, as if she'd only just paused to rest. And in that quiet, he finally understood what waiting really means. Mrs. Alvarez came over later, eyes swollen from tears. She brought flowers and placed them by the window, where sunlight touched everything she left behind. She talked about you every day, she whispered. Said you were coming. Said you always would. Daniel nodded, unable to speak. Because that was true. He always was coming. Just not soon enough. Later that night, he found another note tucked under the breadboard. My boy, if you're reading this, it means the world waited longer than I could. Don't be sad. I lived my life waiting for your footsteps, and that was enough life for me. He folded the letter and held it against his chest until the paper grew warm. At her burial, the sun broke through thin clouds. The lilac blooms had begun to fall, tiny purple petals covering the earth like soft confetti for a celebration no one wanted to attend. He stood with his hand on the headstone, tracing the carved letters of her name, and whispered, I made it, Mama. Then he laughed through his tears. And of course, you had the porch light on. A week later, he found her Bible still open on the table. Psalm 27. Wait for the Lord. Be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. He touched the page, and the ticket slipped out again. Creased, yellowed, but still whole. He smiled sadly. A piece of paper, a prayer, and a promise that outlasted breath. That evening, Daniel stood outside the house. The lilacs swayed in the breeze. The sun fell behind the hills. He reached up and turned on the porch light again. It glowed softly, a small star for anyone still lost on their way home. He whispered, It's still on, Mama, just like you kept it for me. He came home, just as I always said he would. Maybe not to my arms, but to my love. And that's close enough. If you're listening to this story, remember, it isn't really about flights or tickets. It's about the arrivals we delay, and the love that keeps waiting anyway. Call them, visit them, say, I love you out loud while you still can. Because one day, someone will keep a light on for you, and you'll wish you hadn't waited so long to come home. You've been listening to Hidden Feelings, stories that echo the hearts of those who love quietly. If this story touched you, share it. Let it reach someone who needs to be reminded to call home. Subscribe for more stories like this, and keep your porch light on. Someone, somewhere, might still be finding their way back.